This is part 3 of our Them Season 1 recap series. If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, we have a playlist and link for you to catch up. A group of decrepit, stank-wealthy white men try to come up with a decision on how to make the most money in their businesses. They know they are overcharging black families more than they should with a higher interest rate on their mortgage than their white counterparts. Helen thinks there's a better way to do business without taking advantage of black families. She says home values actually increase when black families move into the neighborhood, and trying to scam them won't be sustainable in the long run. But the group of white men shushes her because they think her idea is ridiculous. They tell her that she needs to know her place because she left her wifely duties to work. Somebody better not be doing their wifely duties on this man. I just know his peanuts stank. So Helen goes back to work selling a house to the Johnson family with a high-ass mortgage rate of 20%. She sells a new house to a family, asking them to ignore the part of the contract mentioning how the property shouldn't be sold to a black family. At least this white woman got some heart left in her. She advises them to move in at night, though. When she meets Sergeant Bull and hands him the money, a bribe for looking after the Compton neighborhood, Helen says she will stop selling to black families soon because it's a risk to her job. But Bull wants more money, so he refuses to let Helen stop, saying he will report her for selling to black families. Buck calls the Emorys apes before Helen leaves. Okay, but Buck a motherfucking pig. Later, Helen is attacked in her car by a white man who threatens her for selling houses to black families. Though she isn't physically harmed, Helen is deeply frightened and scarred by the attack. Some time back, the Emorys lived a peaceful life before they moved to Compton. Lucky takes care of her youngest, Chester, while Henry is at work and the girls are at school. One day, an old woman shows up, casually chatting with Lucky and even singing a song. Why this woman looked like she on meth before meth was even invented? Then the woman hears Chester, prompting her to admit she wants her son. Realizing something is wrong, Lucky asks the woman to leave, and then she locks herself inside the house. With 3 men approaching, she takes Chester into her arms and hides him in the closet. Lucky hides, but unfortunately, they still find her. 2 men take advantage of Lucky while the other woman does nothing but watch her scream and cry. She hears a baby crying, and when she follows it, she finds Chester in the closet. The woman carries the boy and plays peekaboo with him for a while, before wrapping him in a cloth, spinning and throwing him over to another man. They play catch using the baby while chanting, "Cat in the bag." When it's over, they drop him to the floor, leaving Lucky shocked and in pain. This is a really difficult scene to watch and more traumatizing to know that there were and are people like this in real life. During the funeral, a woman says God always has a plan, to which Lucky bitch slaps her because what the hell kind of speech was that? After the funeral, the Emorys notice the change in Lucky's behavior. Even Gracie admits to Ruby that she's afraid of her mother and they don't want to be like her in the future. Henry assures them that everything will be fine. So when he receives the call from the company, he decides to take his family to a new place and leave everything behind to start a new life. He tells Lucky she must be strong because she still has 2 daughters who need their mother. Back to the present day, Ruby wakes up and finds her mother watching them sleep. She knows there's something different about her, so she asks her if she's okay. Lucky smiles at her, telling her to go back to sleep because everything's fine and there's nothing to worry about. Then Ruby realizes her mother is holding a big axe, planning to do the unimaginable. But before she can do anything, Lucky swings the axe and hits her. Lucky wakes up from the nightmare, terrified that she had killed her daughters in her dream. The image is so realistic that she gets up to shake the thought, only to find her feet dirty and the same massive axe under her bed. It's the 7th day, and the Emorys are all losing it one by one. While Ruby is in a daze eating cereal, you can see a glimpse of her reflection on the spoon with white milk dripping down. This is foreshadowing something that will happen later. Lucky imagines hurting her youngest, Gracie, that she accidentally burns her while doing her hair. Realizing what she's done, she feels guilty and apologizes. Gracie should get an Emmy because the rage she just portrayed when your mama burned your neck. Accurate AF. Meanwhile, Ugly Betty finds black mold in her house, a callback to her speech at the HOA meeting, comparing having black people move into her neighborhood to the slow growth of mold and how by the time you noticed it, it was too late. Burks calls Henry to his office and explains to him how he's not doing well in his job, so he's removing him from the Pentagon project. Henry is shocked. In this scene, Burks is basically reprimanding Henry for getting into good graces with the boss of the company. Henry hides his clenched fists under the table as Burks keep on taunting him, saying he is no longer assigned the Pentagon project. After getting scolded, Henry quietly leaves the office while the other engineers watch him. It don't matter how hard you work, if you're black, they always find a way to bring you down. Meanwhile, Lucky visits Hazel to talk about the dream she's been having. Hazel assures her that she will never hurt her children, so there's no need to worry so much. But Lucky says she did actually hurt Gracie doing her hair that morning. Hazel specifically says Lucky don't know how to do hair. Even Ray Charles could have told her that. She offers Lucky and her family a room in her house if they ever want to leave Compton. Hazel finally reveals the Beaumont family's story. She says the neighborhood drove them crazy, which resulted in Mrs. Beaumont killing her family. She was then sent to the Central State Nut House. Betty goes to the bank to access her account so she and Clark can move to a new house. The bank teller advises her that Clark needs to be there before he lets Betty check the account because she's a woman. Betty insists that her father opened the account for her, threatening to contact him if she doesn't get access to it that day. She hasn't touched a penny in their savings, so she is sure there is more than $6,000 in there. So she is stunned when the teller reveals there's a little less than $400 left in her account. Ha, racist bitch is broke AF. When Henry comes home, the television switches on itself, making Henry forget about his bad day at the office. While sitting on the couch alone, the tap dance man appears beside him, reminding him how Burks disrespected him at the office. He provokes Henry by asking him what he will do about being removed from the Pentagon project and being denied a share of the profit, which will affect his entire family. So Henry gets up, grabs a gun from his room, and makes his way to Burks' house. Gracie actively participates in class and even volunteers to recite in front of her classmates. However, while she's doing her part, she gets distracted when she sees Ms. Vera standing outside, staring at her. The other kids start laughing when Gracie forgets the lines, but the poor little girl can't stop staring at Ms. Vera. Grace starts saying "cat in the bag" over and over again. It starts as a whisper until her voice gets louder, scaring the other kids and even the teacher herself. At the same time, Lucky visits Mrs. Beaumont to hear about her story. Mrs. Beaumont said someone, the man with the black hat, was giving her instructions. One day she poured bleach all over her husband and their only son to whiten their skin, but instead, killing them slowly. Lucky has to pick up Gracie, and her teacher lets her know that Gracie was saying "cat in the bag." This scares Lucky. Then the bitch-ass teacher says Gracie shouldn't be enrolled because she's not there to learn and suggests only white kids are there to learn. Ruby arrives at the gym to watch the other cheerleaders as Doris has asked her to. Doris wanted to audition, and she asked Ruby to do the same. Ruby watches in awe as the cheerleaders perform in front of them, and when they pull her to join them, Ruby does her best. She doesn't notice that the cheerleaders start dancing creepily, bones breaking while she's dancing in the middle, and soon she's alone. That twisting was some next-level exorcist shit. Upon arriving at Burks' house, Henry starts looking for a way in. A white man notices him and asks what he's doing in the area. Henry smiles and excuses himself, pretending to leave. But when the man turns around, Henry hits him on the back of his head with his gun. Meanwhile, Betty approaches Lucky, demanding that she act civilized and clean up her mess. Lucky walks away, but Betty calls her the N-word, angering her. So Lucky walks to Betty and smacks her so hard, she ends up in a project with Tyler Perry. Gracie cheers her mama on. "We beat their asses," she says. Then she's shady AF, looking back at the white bitch before going back in. Feeling humiliated, Betty goes home and trashes the place, peeling the wallpaper, breaking glasses, and throwing furniture to the floor. Then she phones George the milkman for help. Betty is an interesting character because she lives in a patriarchal society who constantly has gotten screwed over by the men around her. And in order to feel any power, she punches down. Leaving the man bleeding to death, Henry then makes his way inside Burks' home. Burks' wife is oblivious to him roaming inside their house because she's busy yapping on the phone. When Henry realizes that Burks is not home yet, he finally leaves. Betty Wendell arrives at George's farm, saying she needs a favor from him. George offers her a drink, then Betty reveals that Lucky struck her, and she wants her and her family dead. George doesn't argue with Betty, but instead tells her he will do it as slowly and as long as she likes him to. Okay, that sounds like an innuendo. They gonna do racist exercise in the bedroom? Sergeant Bull arrives at the Wendell's house after a report that Betty has gone missing. The entire house is a mess, and Marty thinks the Emorys are to blame. But Bull thinks that, because Betty's wallet and car are missing, she might have left at her own will. Before Bull leaves, he tells Clark he was spotted at a suspicious bar last night, suggesting it was a gay bar. Clark denies this, but now everything makes sense. This is why Betty never sees the overtime money. He'd be at the bar draining the bank account on hookers so he can drain them boys. Meanwhile, Betty is drunk on George's couch. He is already preparing a rope that Betty thinks he will be using on the Emory family. Betty is barely awake and says she wants to see him use the rope on them. George is overjoyed because he's finally with Betty. Creepy music starts to play, and we realize Betty is in trouble. Betty is too drunk to stay awake, so she passes out on the couch again. Betty is finally getting her karma, but I can't help but feel bad for her, as this is what she experienced with her father when she was younger. At the diner, the tap dance man tells Henry how he lost his 2 fingers after his boss cut them off because he ate the peaches that fell off a basket. Henry says he would have done something about it if it was him, but the tap dance man reminds him that he can't even do something about Burks. Henry laughs every time the tap dance man says something, but because he is the only one who can see him, the other customers look at him like he's crazy. After deciding they will leave for good, Lucky consults Hazel again. Hazel asks Lucky why she didn't mention anything about Chester. Then she encourages her to pray hard with her. While they both cry, Hazel instills in Lucky that they should be the ones deciding when to send their children to God, not other people. That way, they get their power back. When Gracie sees her mother kneeling on the floor, she asks her who she is talking to, and a deformed face appears. Ruby admits to Doris that she doesn't want to be like her mother, saying she doesn't want to be ugly anymore. "Girl, your mother is a goddess. She says she wants to be beautiful and perfect like Doris." They kiss, and when Ruby opens her eyes, her skin color has changed. Her eyes have also turned blue like Doris. However, when Doris disappears, her skin and eyes return to their original colors. Ruby then spots the white paint nearby and dips her arm into the can, coating her skin with the thick white paint. Afterward, she shows up at the bonfire gathering with white paint all over her body. She starts dancing in front of everyone, but she doesn't get the reaction she expected to receive. The white students look at her with deep sadness. Gracie becomes frightened when her mother takes her to the basement. There's something off about her, but Lucky says that all she wants is to keep her babies safe. When Lucky brings out the big axe, Gracie falls back on the stairs, promising she'll be good. But Lucky isn't herself. The black hat man keeps on whispering to her, instigating that she inflicts pain on her daughter. So Lucky swings the big axe, and luckily, Gracie avoids it in time. When the axe lands on a step, Lucky wakes up from the trance and realizes what she's done. She lies to Gracie, saying she chopped off Miss Vera's head off. Then Ruby shows up, covered in white paint from head to toe, saying there's something wrong with her. After getting provoked again by his friend, Henry decides to follow Sergeant Bull. When the officer realizes he's being followed, he talks to Henry and asks if he's seen Betty Wendell, because she's been missing. Henry doesn't care at all, and Bull quickly changes the topic to Lucky, implying that she's crazy and that maybe he should go talk to her. Henry snaps and shoots the officer multiple times before driving off. Henry returns home, telling his family that they have to leave immediately. After having packed a few things, they plan to leave while the neighborhood is asleep. Ruby and Gracie get in the car, while Henry returns inside to take their things. Marty and Earl want to take matters into their own hands because Clark refuses to confront the Emorys regarding his missing wife. Clark tries to stop his friends from going to the Emorys. Meanwhile, Henry sees the box with Chester's initials and decides to bring it with him. To his surprise, the box contains his son's remains, not his things. Meanwhile, the neighbors are threatening the Emorys with a gun. Lucky apologizes to Henry, saying she didn't want to leave Chester behind, so she dug up his remains and put them in a box. That's the end of the 7th episode. One last part left covering the last 3 episodes. This were very difficult episodes to watch, and I understand if many people weren't able to get through the entire thing. What did you guys think?
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.